Hello everybody and welcome to the Redmen TV. My name's Dan KLOPP. I'm here to talk about all things related to Liverpool Football Club for the next 25 minutes, half an hour, however long we fancy. Please feel free to get involved as ever. Let me know what we're thinking. Let me know if you've got any questions, any opinions, anything you want to get said on the internet that might just get read out by me, but I will decide. First and foremost, I hope everybody's well. Hope everybody's dusted themselves down after yesterday and feeling a little bit better in the aftermath of what was a very, very, very disappointing defeat, of course, at the hands of arch rivals Manchester United at Old Trafford, as Liverpool bowed out of the FA Cup, of course. Liam Hughes, hi, hello, mate. Hope you are well. Disappointing. Really properly disappointing yesterday. We'll start off with that. I don't want to spend too much time dwelling on the fallout of what happened from that game, of course. I've done quite a lot of that already, and I'm going to do even more of that in like an hour and a half time on the podcast. So I won't spend too long sort of raking over the bones and the wreckage of that game. Massive shame, as I mentioned, really. Hello, Alice. Hope you're well as well. I'm all good, thanks. Goat since 1997, still recovering, and not just because of Paddy's Day. Yeah, I think a lot of people have been in the same boat. Craig Flynn, regular listener, viewer, and contributor. Hello, hope you're all well, mate. As I say, really frustrating more than anything. Like, obviously, I'm gutted about it. My belief and sort of hope and ambition that this quadruple was actually achievable had definitely gone up a notch or two over the past 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, of course. But even in the past 3 or 4 days, like in the wake of the Europa League draw and the Champions League draw, I started to think my head and heart started to align ever so slightly. I was like, okay, like as much as it was a little bit of a pipe dream, now all of a sudden it becomes a potential reality. And I was very aware that yesterday's game was not going to be straightforward, far from it. Obviously heading into the bear pit that is Old Trafford, certainly from a Liverpool point of view, is never going to be easy. Like, it's rare. Obviously, we've had days in the sun there. Of course, we have. The 5-0 a couple of years ago springs to mind, obviously, as a main figure in that. But it was never likely to be a walk in the park. It just isn't the case more often than not when we head to grounds like that. We've seen it at Goodison as well, unfortunately, more often than not. So, yeah, I was very aware that we had to get through that. But I felt like if we were able to, with players coming back after the break and, like I say, the European draws falling in our favour and all that sort of stuff, it was like all of a sudden everything seemed possible. So that has sort of played into just how upset and how gutted I am about that result, to be honest with you. But I think the manner in which it played out as well hasn't helped, hasn't eased the pain at all, because if we play crap and we get beat, that's one thing, but we weren't crap yesterday. We were fine. Like the defeat against Arsenal recently is probably the only one we can really sort of turn to at this time as something to compare it with. We were really bad that day. We deservedly got beat that day. And some might argue we deservedly got beat yesterday, but for me, after a really bad 30 minutes of that game, we were the better side for a large chunk of it. And there were spells, particularly in the second half, that, as mentioned here by Brian, we could have been home and dry, and 100% agree with you. Like, we could have put it out of sight, we could have put them to bed, and it felt like, I don't know what you all think, but it felt like at periods, we were playing as if we did have like a larger margin. It was playing like we were 2-3-0 up already, and we were just kind of cruising in first, second gear, and just felt like we were keeping them at arm's length a little bit. And it was almost as if it was reminiscent of when we did beat them 5-0, and we kind of played out the last half an hour like it was a training exercise, because we'd embarrassed them enough already. We didn't need to go for the throat anymore. It was done. It was over as a contest, and we had things that we're keeping our eye on further down the line. We played a portion of yesterday's second half as if we had a game on like Tuesday night or Wednesday night or something. It was very strange, and obviously people will point to certain moments, certain mistakes, certain errors, and rightfully so, of course. There was obviously the 5-on-2, the 4-on-2, there's the mistakes that led to the goals in extra time and all that sort of stuff. But for me, it was the lack of willingness to sort of capitalise on what was a pretty dominant performance for large parts of the second half. That's what did my head in most of all. It felt like we were just cruising a little bit, and it was all a little bit too, yeah, we'll keep the ball, don't worry about it. We don't need to hurt you, we'll hurt you when we want. And games of football, by and large, don't go like that, especially against Manchester United, especially at their place. There's always going to be a moment, whatever you think about them, and however bad you think they are right now, and listen, they are pretty bad at times, of course they are, but whatever that thought process may be, there's going to be a moment whereby they have half a chance, maybe even a proper chance. They had a couple of them, if truth be told, and they might punish you, and they did. So yeah, the game management argument is one I can definitely maybe not get behind, but can see why people are saying it. Let's put it that way. And our game management has been exceptional at times this season. I mean, people are questioning Jurgen Klopp and his subs. And again, I kind of get it because they haven't helped us. Whereas previously this season, on more than one occasion, numerous occasions, the subs have kind of been a masterstroke that's allowed us to win games of footy. That clearly wasn't the case yesterday. So again, I understand the arguments, I really do. But yeah, ultimately, just an air of frustration and a bit of what could have been from yesterday in a way, because obviously then you see they get Coventry in the draw, and there is that, you can't escape that. That should have been us. And again, all due respect to Coventry, but Liverpool against Coventry, like, the bookies would make us overwhelming favourites to reach the final. So it does half feel, you can't ignore the fact it does half feel like an opportunity to be at Wembley, not just for the semi-final, potentially even the final, has gone. And I'm not sure it was much down to Manchester United's doing, as much as you can credit them for the spirit and the character they showed and all that sort of stuff. We could have won that game and probably should have won that game. We were ahead twice in it, and we've managed to somehow conspired not to win it. Let's put it that way. Annoying. I've already spent much longer than I wanted to talk about that. And I know, I'm very aware there's all sorts of different fallouts, a lot of them vile, a lot of them abhorrent, to come out of the game as well. I know they're being dealt with in areas way above my pay grade. And the topics will be discussed in length, in good time, possibly even on the podcast this afternoon. So I'm not going to delve too deep into that because A, it's really depressing and a sorry state of affairs, and B, I want to be more positive if possible. Sound. Joanne Alviso, how are you doing, mate? I hope you're okay. We will carry on down up the Reds. And you know what? Yeah, that's a good way to sort of move on from that game. You're right. And me and Chris spent a good old 10 minutes yesterday saying we can't let this define our season. This has to act as a motivation and a bit of a kick up the arse to say, you've been brilliant. You've been so good. You've defied many of the odds against a lot of adversity. This can't derail you now. This has to be the thing that you look upon as sort of a motivation to go, that hurt like hell. How do we not let that happen again? How do we improve from that? How do we live to fight another day, essentially? And listen, there's so much to play for this season. Like, after the break, it's going to be full systems go. Like, we've got to absolutely fly at it. We've got Europa League to win, a Premier League to win. If you'd have offered me this situation at the start of the season, I'd have bit your hand off. It's hard to be so positive and so sort of laissez-faire about defeat at the hands of Manchester United, of course, is certainly in the manner which it happened. But let's try our best, eh? And yeah, things are still good in Liverpool Football Club. Cool. Sound. Yeah, let's try and not talk about that game if possible. So, news-wise, there's quite a bit of it, and it's actually transfer-related. That's how desperate I am not to talk about that game in too much detail right now. Brahim Diaz, this comes from HITC, and it claims that Manchester United and Liverpool are keen on Brahim Diaz. 15.5 million Real Madrid star, they describe him as. This is Erik ten Hag's Manchester United and Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool are among the clubs who are interested in Real Madrid star Brahim Diaz. I just scrolled down. Interest for the summer transfer window. Arsenal, Chelsea and Tottenham are also interested in 24-year-old former Manchester City player, and Arsenal were also linked. His representatives have made it clear that he's not looking to leave Los Blancos this summer, the Whites, of course. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Ultimately, my sort of take on this one, I want to touch on a couple of transfer stories whilst I'm here. It is that guy, Naldo, by the way. Yeah. Is that I'm not sure. The transfer stuff's going to be fascinating. Obviously, we've seen Michael Edwards in situ at Old Trafford as well, and Richard Hughes is expected to follow him through the door at Liverpool in the coming days. So the transfer stuff is definitely going to start hotting up. I expect contracts to do the same as well. Obviously, Trent, Virgil van Dijk, and perhaps most poignantly for this conversation, Mohamed Salah. I think a lot will hinge on what Mo Salah does, what happens with his future in the summer, to be honest. I think all being sort of equal right now, I don't think we'll go for a forward necessarily. I think when you consider the 5 options that we've got, all fitting 5 in, I know there's a Cody Gakpo conversation. I've already had that conversation on Redmen TV too. If you want to go check that out, me and Chris again speaking in depth about Cody and what he's up to right now. But there's also likes of Ben Doak, there's Kate Gordon, there's Jayden Danns, of course, who's emerged as a real prospect in recent times. Lewis Kumas as well falls into that category. So I'm not sure we enter the market for an attacker necessarily in the summer. providing Mo Salah stays, of course. If Mo Salah goes, that's a different conversation entirely, because then you do need a replacement for him. Ideally, someone like for like, and Brahim Diaz isn't necessarily like for like. Nobody is really like for Mo Salah. That doesn't exist essentially in the world. I think Bukayo Saka is probably the closest to it, to be honest. But I've seen links to Jamal Musiala, and as much as it might be a bit of a pipe dream, it might be a little bit hard to see happening right now. I think someone like Musiala or Florian Wirtz, of course, at Bayer Leverkusen, they would be my preference over someone like Brahim Diaz. The next transfer story I want to touch upon. In fact, I'll dive into the comments, see what people think about Brahim Diaz, if we have any thoughts on him whatsoever, because again, I'll come back to it. And it's interesting, I did a little player comparison actually on him on FBref, and he was closely sort of stylistically linked to someone like Jamal Musiala as well, which again, I think I'd be all in on Musiala, to be honest with you, first and foremost. I think he's a much better option, and there is a bit of unrest there. I think he's rejected a couple of contracts now at Bayern Munich, and obviously we know the Bayern Munich situation is anything but perfect. They're not sure who their next manager is going to be, of course, and it does feel as though if there was ever going to be an opportunity to get someone like Musiala out of a club like Bayern Munich, this summer may well be it. Joan Alviso says he's indifferent, would like Salah to stay and sort out next year with another. Yeah, I think obviously he's out of contract at the end of next season, essentially, so we have got another year of Mo Salah at least, it feels like. However, I do wonder if FSG might need to cash in on him this summer. And I say need, they don't need to financially, but I wonder in terms of, can you let someone of the brilliance and the value, more importantly, of Mohamed Salah leave for free in like 18 or less than 18 months' time? I'm not entirely sure. That goes against everything FSG's model has stood for. They've let some players go for free and Sadio Mane for dirt cheap, so possibly. But it feels, with the Saudi money, and obviously we know what happened last summer from Saudi Arabia, it feels like if there is 200 million, 300 million on the table, 300 million, maybe, who knows. Prof says Liverpool should wait for a new head coach first, but I think the problem with waiting for a new head coach, and ultimately, we can't get any transfer business done before the market opens, so there is that. But I think the problem is there. It feels like whoever the new manager is going to be, we're going to have to wait until the end of the season before we announce them, because if it is Xabi Alonso, even if it's Ruben Amorim, who are the two front runners for that post, we're not going to be able to announce them before the end of the season anyway, because they've all got matters ongoing in their own domestic jobs now. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Official Cam says Salah won't leave. Musiala is a dream option, and Brahim Diaz is a baller. Okay, Musiala would probably be I say that I like Florian Wirtz a lot as well. John Sommers asks, hello mate, hi Dan, do you think the defeat will knock our confidence, extra motivation, to be honest with you mate? And again, I'm often sort of the glass half full guy here, so it might just be blind optimism that I'm going into with this, but we don't seem like the group to sort of dwell on defeat like that and to let that be a problem. It feels like it might galvanise us a little bit. Jurgen Klopp is the master of getting the best out of situations and making hurtful defeats turn them into a positive. So I can only look at it that way, to be honest with you. And obviously I hope I'm right, but it also feels like the breaks come at a good time, not just in the fact that we're going to get hopefully a couple of players back thereafter, but also they're going to have to stew on it a little bit, and they're going to have to take a little bit of time to realise what's just happened. But I think they might need the rest as well. Second half of extra time, and particularly yesterday, a lot of them look spent. So I think as much as it isn't a rest for a lot of them, I'll touch on internationals before I go, not playing the same level of intense football as they used to at Liverpool might just be a positive for 10, 15, 14 days, whatever it is. Yeah, that's the way I'm hoping it pans out anyway. Jeff Denton says Musiala and Wirtz and cashing on Mo. Oh, Cody. Cashing on Mo and Cody and Bill for the future. Yeah, possibly. But they're both wonderful footballers. They're all wonderful footballers, all four that you mentioned. There's no doubt about it, though. I'll just quickly say Cody Gakpo is not enjoying his best moments at Liverpool Football Club. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Ellie McDowell, on that note, says, I think Gakpo has been treated a bit unfairly. He will never get more than 2 matches in the same position. He got 13 goals for the club, and he was not the reason we lost. No, he wasn't the reason we lost. He's been scapegoated ever so slightly, I think, from yesterday. And don't get me wrong, that's not me saying he was perfectly fine, because he wasn't. He was problematic. He was part of the reason why a couple of moments broke down. They were very promising moments. He wasn't central in the goals that we conceded. That's a positive. But listen, it wasn't just yesterday. I actually felt like the 2 goals in midweek in Sparta were exactly what he needed, confidence-wise as well, because he's definitely suffering a mini crisis of confidence, I think it's fair to say. And I take your point, you're absolutely spot on in the fact he's not been able to play in a regular position on a regular basis, week in, week out, has definitely hindered him. There's no two ways about that. It started first game of the season. He was in midfield first game of the season at Chelsea, and it's like he's never nailed down a position thereafter. So it's a little bit of circumstances, but as well, I'm almost a little bit tired of saying he's a victim of his versatility as well, because at some point that excuse, that reason stops washing, and at some point you just got to play better. And I'm ever so slightly leaning towards that. Now, I really like Cody Gakpo. I think he's got loads and loads of attributes, loads and loads of positives to his game. But again, there's no doubt about it, he is not firing right now at all. And we need him firing ultimately as well, especially whilst Diogo Jota's been out. Official Cam says, hopefully Curtis Jones, Trent and Jota are back. With those 3 fit back, I don't see anyone stopping us from winning the treble. No, I echo that, mate. And hopefully you can put Alisson into that equation as well in the not too distant future. Lee Wisgood, I'm sound, mate. Hope you are as well. And Dave echoes the point about never getting a run of games in his preferred left wing position. It's interesting that, because obviously when he arrived last season, he looked like the heir to Bobby Firmino's throne, didn't he? He looked like he was just the perfect false 9 and the answer to all our prayers after Firmino's life at Liverpool. But for multiple reasons, position, confidence, form, he hasn't managed to nail it down at all yet, and it's a massive, massive shame. Ali comes back. I agree, Gakpo was poor, just not the only. No, he was far from the only one. And I think there were a few below par performances in amongst that as well. I think the only one, but probably the standout performer, just to finish on the United game, was Alexis McAllister. So okay, back into the news then. I did want to touch on this story actually, because away from Brahim Diaz, Liverpool have been linked with a lad who's been described as the next Nathan Ake. Now, make of that what you will. I think that comparison is more positional than ability. Although Nathan Ake is a perfectly good Premier League footballer. According to Football Inside, Liverpool are closely monitoring Ajax sensation Jorrel Hato ahead of the summer transfer window. The versatile 18-year-old defender has been catching attention in Holland with performance for the Dutch Giants this season and is emerging as their latest prize asset. He's understood Liverpool have a strong interest in Hato and their Premier League rivals, Manchester United. I'm already fed up of saying Manchester United, and are sort of also keeping tabs on his progress. It says here, proper footballer who can play but currently lacks the physical strength for the Premier League. Okay, now the reason I want to talk about this one is A, because it's a news story, and B, because I think, listen, it might not be him, and it might not be accurate, the story, who knows? I've got to take it at face value, of course. But I think 18-year-old, left-footed centre-back who plays a little bit of left-back, like, to bring us back to last summer, that fits so many of the criteria, it ticks so many of the boxes that we were looking for. I think he makes a lot of sense. And again, I come back to that line there, he currently lacks the physical strength. Now, I've not seen any of this lad play. Yeah, that'll probably change over the coming week now that we've been linked to him. But when he's 18 years old, it's kind of what you expect in terms of lacking the physical strength. Like, we can't all be, he's a little bit older, we can't all be Jorrel Hato, who's just an absolute beast despite his tender years. So, and I think, again, come back to it, I mentioned earlier on, I don't think we'll be in the market for an attacking option necessarily. I do think we'll be in the market for a defender, and I still maintain it might just be a left-footed one who can play left-back as well, which he has played 32 games at centre-back this season, Hato. He's also played 7 at left-back. So if we are still of the belief, if Liverpool's still of the belief that we need that type of player, he appears to be a potential candidate for the role. So, interesting one. And to Ellie's point as well, we do like a Dutch lad. I suppose it makes sense because, I mean, Pep Linders has been renowned for being a bit of an expert in that market. And obviously, he's still at the football club for now. He's actually heavily linked to the Ajax job, isn't he? So, that's an interesting little turn there. But, yeah, I think when you've got Virgil van Dijk, obviously Ryan Gravenberch, Cody Gakpo, the much mentioned, the much spoken about Cody Gakpo, I think it makes sense because if you do like the lad and you think he could well be a star of the future or worthy of a place in this Liverpool squad, you've got the Dutch captain there, you've got other Dutch lads, so integrating him into the side is one thing, but also you can literally go to Virgil van Dijk and say, do you know much about him, what's he like? And on that note, he's actually played once already for the Dutch national team at senior level at 18 years old, so there's clearly something there. And again, you could easily go to Virgil van Dijk and say, A, is he good enough? And B, what's he like as a player, as a person? Because that is also important. Sam, Nay asks, no DM signing for you? Probably not, to be honest, no. And I think, obviously, the emergence and the brilliance of Wataru Endo plays into that. Obviously, Alexis McAllister's kind of stopped being that now. He's reverted to what I'd probably describe as his preferred position. As an 8, a more advanced midfielder, but he can still do a job in 6 if necessary. But I think, moreover, it's the positive news, and I'm aware I'm probably running before I can walk on this, around Stefan Bajcetic in recent days, because he's alluded to it himself on his own social media that he's getting closer to return. But Jurgen Klopp himself said last week that he is back individual training now, and he's likely to return to team training after the international break, which for this season, I'm not sure how big of a boost that is. It might well be a big boost, because if he plays any role between now and the end of the campaign, amazing. But I actually think more next season, and with Stefan Bajcetic maybe getting some minutes now and then a full pre-season under his belt, he's brilliant. Like we've seen it last year, he's exceptional. And there was actually talk about him becoming an 8, so maybe he plays a little bit more of advance, and maybe he isn't the answer to the 6 and helping out Endo and stuff like that. But I think he's a wonderful player, and they said something completely different. And yeah, I'm excited. And listen, he's got to get back up to speed. He's got to return the way he left and all that sort of stuff. So I'm aware there's a lot of uncertainty around Stefan Bajcetic. But all being well in his world, I think we won't need a DM because of him. That's my hope anyway. And listen, I'm not against us going to sign in the DM. We might think Bajcetic isn't ready. We might think fitness-wise he's going to struggle. He might want to play more as an 8. Who knows? He might want to use him as a right-back a little bit. We've seen that, of course, this season in his fleeting appearances. So, yeah, there's definitely a world whereby a defensive midfielder does make sense in the transfer market, but there's very much also a world, as Alfredo alludes to here, where that isn't necessary as well. Endo Wataru is world class. Yeah, I like that. Prof, yes, we need a centre back and a DM. Let's not forget. So we've got to cover that. We also have Owen Beck. He's out on loan. He's gone back to Dundee, of course. Can play left back, left wing back. God, he can play some positions. JD says Endo, Bajcetic, Morton, and Mac 10 should be enough cover at DM. Yeah, I agree. Tyler Morton's a really interesting one. Obviously, you're having a very good season out on loan at Hull. Does feel like he's got a big summer ahead of him. I think he's either going to have to nail down a place in Liverpool's plans or potentially leave on a permanent. And that's just kind of me just saying that. I don't know anything about that. But he is getting to that time in his career now, similar to like Harry Wilson got to at some point as well, whereby you kind of need to be a Liverpool player or not. He has been playing for Hull a lot on that note. He's been really, really impressive as well, as has Fabio Carvalho. And this is another situation that's fascinating to me. And obviously, Michael Edwards' return and the appointment of Richard Hughes might have a part to play in this. And of course, whoever the next manager is, because I don't necessarily think there is. I don't buy into that there's a problem between Klopp and Carvalho and his attitude and all that sort of stuff. There might be, of course. Who am I to say otherwise? But I do wonder whether Carvalho has got a sort of a reinvigorated, renewed hope of playing for Liverpool next season under a new manager, potentially. Somebody who might be a bit more akin to him stylistically. It might be a better fit. Who knows? Yeah. But Fabio Carvalho is a very good player, and we chased him for quite a long time. We obviously missed out on him on one deadline day, ends up doing a deal in the summer. So Liverpool are clearly strong admirers of what he has to offer. It just hasn't worked yet. It didn't work at Leipzig on loan either, but credit to him. All the noise at Hull, and his manager, I think Liam Rossini, spoke about him a lot since he got there, and he's been very, very impressed. So, yeah, Carvalho's got a chance, and again, it's a big summer for him. Big summer for him as well. Nay would like us to get at Emerson, Atalanta. We're going to see him up close and personal, of course, after the break. Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see how he gets on. And Alan Varea is another one who's been linked at Porto, of course, quite a lot, as was this guy. I haven't even seen this name for a while. Liverpool 12 man. So it's interesting how the pursuit of Andre is not only cooled but froze, yeah, and that's such a weird one because Liverpool wanted Andre. I've said this numerous times on these shows now. We were dead keen, and the only reason we didn't get him in the first place because they said, can you wait till the Copa Libertadores is done? They won the Copa Libertadores, so it ended up being quite a smart decision from them. But we couldn't wait, so we went and signed Wataru Endo instead, and he's turned out to be fantastic, as you know. And I think Fluminense and Andre were kind of at ease with the situation because they were like, oh, Liverpool will come back in January, don't worry about it. And then we didn't, of course. And then I didn't expect maybe Fulham to go for them in January. And João Paulinho ended up staying, so didn't need to replace João Paulinho. It ended up being a bit of a mess, really, for Andre and Fluminense. And I am left wondering now where he's at. Like, there's no doubt about it. It feels like a move is on the horizon, on the cards for him. Whether it's to a club of the stature of Liverpool is a different question altogether as well. Charles J says the worst result for a long time. Yeah, it wasn't good. It was not good. I spoke about the results a lot at the top of the show. I'm not going to pour over it much more because it's just depressing. Ultimately, the quadruple, which I had very high hopes of being a genuine possibility, is now not, and that's just a massive shame. Yeah, quite possibly, Dave. That's kind of the point I was alluding to. Maybe I think they were comfortable with just wait because I want to stick around. You know, credit to him in a way. And I said this at the time, like, you can't really begrudge him staying at the club that he's come up through the ranks through. They've made him essentially, and they had a chance of winning the Copa Libertadores when we went and asked the question. Obviously, they said no, but they ended up winning the Copa Libertadores. So again, I'll say it, like, fair play. Like, they did it, and they did the right thing by them because it worked. They won it for the first time in their history, I think I'm right in saying. That got them in the Club World Cup final, of course, eventually when they got beat by Man City. But again, I suppose in the cold light of day, in hindsight, when now he's still there and he could have potentially been a Liverpool player, maybe there is a little tinge of regret on Andre's side. So I'll just quickly wrap up the news before I go. I've already mentioned Brahim Diaz. I've done Jorrel Hato. Liverpool have also been linked with Daniel Mal, another attacker, of course. Build have said we're keen. 50 million it would cost to get him. I'll come back to what I said earlier about Salah and stuff. Don't see it with Salah staying personally. Injuries wise, not only were we knocked out the FA Cup yesterday by Manchester United, which is grim, Jurgen Klopp also suggested that Luis Diaz had a groin problem, Darwin Núñez had a hamstring discomfort, and Cody Gakpo twisted his ankle. Not good. My overriding hope on this is that they're not serious, first and foremost, and that they're the sort of injuries that rival players seem to pick up on the eve of an international duty time and time again. I really hope that's the case. I have seen reports from Colombia that they are bracing themselves for Luis Diaz to pull out of international duty, because as things stand, I think all of them are still scheduled to go away with their nations on what are glorified holidays, basically, because they're all playing friendlies. None of the friendly matters. The only competitive game that I could find this morning involving a Liverpool lad was Wataru Endo, who is playing against North Korea in World Cup qualifiers. Isn't that pleasant? So yeah, I hope that Diaz and Núñez both don't go on international duty, basically, and they're just allowed to recover on Merseyside. I obviously hope the injuries aren't serious. That's the main thing. But yeah, let's hope that they're fine and there is no problem. And Ellie, yeah, I agree, especially if they are minor concerns maybe, or there is just a little bit of a precaution going on there, who knows. But if it means they don't go away and they're fine, that's fine by me. Just on international duty as well, whilst we're loosely on the topic, it is predominantly friendlies, as I mentioned. England will face Brazil in one of them, with Joe Gomez involved, of course, after his recall to the international team. Colombia, which is obviously Luis Diaz, if he goes, will face Spain and Romania, which is interesting. Argentina, Alexis McAllister, of course, will face El Salvador and Costa Rica. And perhaps most interestingly of all, Uruguay will take on the Ivory Coast in one of their friendlies, which is perfectly fine. That's okay. That's a game that makes sense. And their other friendly, according to Google, will be against the Basque country. Yeah, make of that what you will. That is a thing that's apparently happening. So if there was ever an international break to miss out on for Darwin Núñez, this is probably the one, I would say. 2 friendlies, one against the Ivory Coast and one against the Basque country. What is that? Sound, quickly before we go, I want to tell you, Fabrizio Romano has been speaking about the manager situation again. He told Court Offside that we know many clubs will be busy with hiring new managers over the summer. Bayern Liverpool will fight for Xabi Alonso. I told you before. Come on, he's told us before. I'll keep repeating it. Keep an eye on Ruben Amorim and the sporting manager, because many clubs are looking at him, including in England, because he's appreciated in the Premier League. Sound. I'll quickly wrap up. Dead quickly pop into the chat before I go. I hope he's in. Yes, likewise. Tricia says, our lads can now rest and concentrate on the league. It is all about the next game. You never walk on. Yeah, 100%. I echo that. And it's kind of what I said earlier on. We need to use this as a spur and a motivation to go again after the break. And ultimately, in the cold light of day, as much as it still hurts and still a little bit raw, it does mean one less game of football, and it might mean we actually have some days off at some point for the players, which is nice. Not us. We would have days off. We don't do that here. So hopefully it can be a positive, and it means we can go on to lift the Europa League and Premier League. That's kind of where I'm at with it right now. But that doesn't mean it doesn't still hurt like a mother, because my God, it does. Sound? Yeah, hope you're all well. Before I go, thank you very much for saying thanks, everyone, as well. It's much appreciated. Dave, likewise. Thanks for getting involved. Thanks for contributing. Yeah, we will still be doing streams, Ellie, and just brought that up. We absolutely will, 100%. Nothing stops here, you know that. We've always got stuff to talk about. Thanks, Craig, as well. Just want to let you all know, over on redmenplus.com, nothing's slowing down over the international break. There's loads more content coming your way as ever. These included. These don't go anywhere. We still talk and waffle on and have a good old chat about anything that's happening, basically. I've got some special shows lined up as well for over the break with a few great people. I will keep my powder dry on what they are right now, but they do exist and they are already in the calendar, so I'm not just making stuff up for the fun of it. But yeah, redmenplus.com, sign up as a captain or a legend to get more of this sort of stuff, more of everything that we do, documentaries, etc., etc. Keep you busy after what has been a grueling but incredible season so far, in spite of what happened yesterday. And just to answer this one, because I don't want to talk about the poor performance too much, I've done a lot of it and I'm about to do more of it in an hour. Let me have half an hour of just transfer rumours. Let me just cleanse myself with the beauty that can be transfer rumours. Thank you very much for getting involved as ever. Honestly, it's much, much appreciated. I enjoyed that. Hope you did too. See you soon.
Thank you so very, very much for checking out the video. If you enjoyed it, drop a like. The season is now well underway. If you need extra Redmen content, be it podcast, videos, documentaries, interviews, and general shows, fill your boots on redmenplus.com today.